Welcome to In the Demo, a show about the stories that get told about groups, how those stories got made, what we think those stories get wrong, and why it matters. You hosts? Farrah Bostic is the founder and head of research and strategy of The Difference Engine, a strategic insights consultancy focused on helping business leaders make decisions. Adam Pierno, author and brand consultant and managing director of brand strategy at Arizona State University. You are now in the demo.
Talk about what we've learned over 3 or 4 episodes, talking about millennials' sex lives and their dating lives and their ability to form intimate, or their ability or inability to form intimate relationships.
Do you have a nickname for today?
For myself?
A generational nickname?
No.
We're retiring the bit.
No, I think I'm back to feeling like that. I've been reading a few of these thought pieces of late about how like Gen X, there's a kind of cohort of Gen Xers who are just like, I refuse to subscribe to this whole idea. And I think that's the thing I identify with. I'm in the, I think I referred to myself in the intro to last time's episode as a generation refusenik. And so I think I'll stick with that this time around.
All right. Well,
I also just like saying refusenik.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. That's your new LinkedIn title.
I'm going to add it to my profile after this.
I love it. I'm Adam Pierno. I am a Generation X. I'm still wearing a flannel and cargo shorts. I don't remember what grunge wore. Jeans from
jeans.
Yeah,
right. but jeans you bought at like the Army surplus or the Goodwill or something.
Oh, surplus, big time, or thrift. Yeah. You couldn't actually go and buy new jeans. That is gross. No, don't let the man sell you jeans. Let the man sell the other man the jeans and then buy the jeans from that guy after he dies.
Yes.
Yeah.
But also, I feel like, especially like early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, is the introduction of expensive jeans.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And so I think there was also a little bit of a resistance to that of like, why am I paying at the time $50 for a pair of jeans for a 7-year-old? I remember my mother saying that.
I still stand by that.
Guess.
Yeah.
Yes.
I still stand by that. That's insane. $8. Nothing over $8 for my kids.
It's a good price limit to set. It allows you to carry on the tradition of like, here's $10. Don't spend it all in one place.
I expect change. Yeah
exactly.
It's like that doesn't even get you out of the house.
No. Though I remember when $5 would. $5 would get you like a ticket to a matinee and a soda.
Yeah, not anymore. Kidding me? $10 doesn't even pay for the popcorn.
Nope. No, it's a damn shame. It's a damn shame. But yes, flannel, jeans, boots, concert tees, the things that basically that Gen Z are wearing now, but they buy it new from the mall. Or probably not the mall. Malls are dead. But where do they shop? You have Gen Z.
Urban Outfitters is still around and recycling all the things I bought at Urban Outfitters in the late 90s. It's pretty wild. My daughter goes and comes back and she had a Sublime t-shirt. And I was like, do you know that that's a band? And she was like, no, I don't care. It's a cool t-shirt. And I'm like, do you want to hear it? And she's like, not really. All right. Style.
Yeah.
Style, baby.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Farrah? What do you think we learned here talking to our guests about intimacy? Like I've been spinning on it a little bit because I listened to them out of order to see if I got a different story. And I think I did a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I mean, my takeaway is probably, I don't know. I don't know that it's different from what I kind of went in with, except, so here's what I think. I have a strong kind of ever was orientation of like, how different is any generation from the generation before, really?
Mm-hmm.
Especially around things like, selecting your romantic partners and forming relationships and, how many How many ways are there to have sex? And, so on and so forth. Like, that has always been kind of my orientation. And I think some of that's reinforced, that it turns out millennials haven't changed everything. They haven't fixed it. They haven't saved us from whatever, from bad sexual behavior, or from retrograde ideas about gender and status. So that felt like, yep, walked in thinking that, walked out feeling kind of affirmed with that.
Yeah.
Except that I also think that, like, there are these incremental changes, and that things do get a little bit better over time, and that there are groups of people within a cohort that really do put in the effort to try to do it a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, to some degree that came up both in the Cindy conversation about the types of people who are opting into her social sex revolution are people who are actively doing the work to engage in and portray sex in a less damaging way than porn.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And is trying to be more realistic and more welcoming and more open and more just healthier about sex as a perfectly normal human expression. And then talking to Cristen, I think the interesting thing was hearing her talk about her self-identify as queer respondents, and that they're not just identifying as non-binary or something. They are actively trying to, quote unquote, queer their relationships and interrogate these dynamics.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting because, the kind of arc of the moral universe has long been a bends towards justice problem is like, yes, but someone does the bending. It doesn't bend on its own. And there's counter forces bending the opposite direction, trying to kind of reinforce
pushing very hard.
Yeah, pushing extremely hard. So you kind of have to let the youths off the hook a bit for their failure to fix everything and save us, which in the context of boomers we called selling out.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's this other, like, huge, enormous set of forces that are, like, yanking on that arc to keep it going the way it's been going. And then you've got these, like, gender and critical studies majors queering their relationships, trying to have, like, open, honest dialogue with their partners about what they want sexually and romantically and how they want to order their relationships. And, like, yeah, their project is going to take way longer to bend the arc than all the powers of states and capitalism and everything else that is like, no, let's keep it this way.
I don't think it's limited to gender studies majors.
No,
I'm seeing the real trend. It's not, you're right, it's not totally bending the arc, and it's not changing everything in real time, but it's undeniable that interrogation of gender roles, the interrogation of relationship balance, the interrogation of, like, sort of relationship morality is that's shifting and being poked at in a way that, going back to when I was single in the 90s, and a young adult, it looks a lot different. It looks dramatically different than it did then. And I wonder, what you said about Cindy and Make Love Not Porn, what I've been wondering is how much of that is the people, millennials or whatever, whoever's participating, how much is that the people now have the will to do that work, or the technology that enables that to be done at scale? Because I think there's always been, it's the same thing as, like, when we talked about the selfies. Like, my dad took selfies. He loved taking pictures of himself. Wherever he went, he had somebody take a picture of himself. It's just his thing that he did. I don't do that. But that's not, like, he was a boomer. That's not a millennial thing. That is, the technology allowed him to have a forward-facing phone. And so I wonder, is that millennials or is that technology? And how do can those things be separated?
Well, so I don't know exactly that I think it's either. Like, the project of queering relationships has been going on certainly decades, probably much longer. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we were talking about, if at some point doctors could sort of take women who are dissatisfied in their marriages and diagnose them with hysteria and then give them hysterectomies or lobotomies or whatever else in order to treat them for their hysteria, then like people have been dissatisfied with the ordering of these relationships for a very long time.
Yep.
So I think some of it is just like, this is a long, incremental, inches at best project, and that you never have as many people engaged in the project as you need to make it go faster. Now, here's where I do think technology plays a role, which I do think it helps accelerate it slightly. I think it certainly takes it out of fringe groups that nobody else has any visibility into and puts it in front of all of us. And then we have to think about what it means.
Right.
I think the reactionary response to these things that we see in the media of freaking out about sexting and ghosting and hooking up and naked parties and whatever else is like is part of the apparatus of slowing the change.
It's trying to add a shock value to something that is not that shocking.
Not that shocking. I mean, here's where a book recommendation I might make is The Secret History of Wonder Woman by Jill Lepore, which is a terrific book. And if you grew up loving Wonder Woman as I did, Linda Carter.
Linda Carter, like, Sun Devil. Linda Carter, ASU Sun Devil.
Oh, really? All right.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. Yeah. But like, that book is so interesting because Marsden, who's credited as the inventor of Wonder Woman, the creator of Wonder Woman, is in a polygamous relationship, is part of a free love, you know, like if probably part of a polycule, you know, whatever, at like Princeton or Harvard or wherever the hell he was. And like, it's part of this first wave feminism kind of a move where people are saying like, we can queer these relationships. It's not the language that they're using.
Right.
And they're also interrogating ideas about power inside of primarily heterosexual relationships, though not exclusively. There are also queer relationships happening there. And so they're also like, and this is where like the lasso of truth comes from. They're experimenting with bondage. It's amazing. This book is so good. It's so good. And it's like,
yeah.
The other thing about him
is, I guess, that all tracks.
The other reason I'm obsessed with him is he's one of the fathers of the lie detector. So he actually invented a polygraph machine. And again, lasso of truth. So it's, you know, the cuffs and the lasso is a little bit of the bondage thing, but also the lasso of truth. It, like, she's constantly like lassoing them around the chest, which is where you attach a polygraph machine. And so he had tried and failed to, he's actually the reason that polygraphs are not admissible in court, because he's the one who tried to test it as a way of submitting evidence. And the courts were like, this is not evidence. And the courts have never changed their mind because it is not evidence of anything.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on how lie detectors are nonsense. But like, you know, he's like a psychologist lawyer and then starts writing comic books with his wives, essentially.
So do you think, you know, I introduced the idea of technology today, but when we talked to Katy and we talked about the apps, those also introduce an element, they amplify an element of promiscuity. You know, it's like, go on all the dates you can, swipe right, like just keep trying. But again, I don't think that's the people. I think people in their early 20s always dated more people. And this is just scale. You're just introducing a way for people to be exposed to more opportunities.
Yeah, I think the swiping kind of thing, the like shopping for a potential sexual or romantic partner is sped up for sure. But we also have like a long history of hiring people to introduce you to other people, video dating,
Oh,
personals ads, all of that kind of stuff in order to and dating services like matchmaking services that tried to scale what Yentas did and all that kind of thing.
yeah.
So it's again not like new to humans to seek an intermediary to help you find a partner for whatever purpose. I think there are a couple of things that have changed. And one is I think it's just become more socially acceptable to say, I am using these tools to have sex, not necessarily to get married. Right. I mean, I even remember like the dating platforms and friends I knew who selected their dating, like preferred OkCupid to eHarmony, because eHarmony kind of wants you to find your spiritual match,
It was the monogamy
meaning it was the
tool. Yeah.
monogamy app, and it was kind of religiously oriented, and or at least it cared a lot about your religious identity. And then OkCupid is like however you want to use it, whatever you want. And so people didn't want to be pressured into, I'm only going to meet people who are desperate to get married. I want to just date and see what's going on. And then you have all the like in the middles, the chemistries and the matches and whatever. I think the thing that concerns people is the feeling that like, and Katy had some good stories of people who had a different strategy for this, but like the ease with which you can reject someone based on a pic and a profile, versus that you meet at a friend's house or at a conference or at a bar or at, the flag football team you joined or whatever, means that people are potentially eliminating a lot of people that could be nice to know, if not hook up with or date or marry. And I think this is where the concern about all of us just like retreating from in-person social interaction is wrapped up in this. And like, are we spending too much of our lives online? Are our relationships predominantly now parasocial as opposed to actually social? And, would we be better off going to mixers and doing speed dating rounds versus swiping through an app? And, I don't know the answer to that. I think part of my feeling about it is there's also just, we're living in times that feel incredibly unstable and unsafe. And we are awash in stories about people being, endangered by other people. And I know in some of the projects we work on, young people in particular talk to us about having social anxiety, about not feeling comfortable in groups and in crowds. And I do think like one of the stereotypes about Gen X is how we all traveled in packs. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
and everybody's dating everybody within their little circle, and
Right.
like you mix and match over time, but like you're always in a group. I mean, I don't know. I think in high school, maybe, I mean, I went out with guy friends one-on-one, but they were not dates, and that was explicit between us. And so like dates, I mean, I could probably count like just the two hands to count that, the number of dates I went on in high school.
Yeah.
Instead, it was a lot of group outings. And, there's a lot of, that was how we did safety, right? If you were in a group, it was safe, right? Your girlfriends were with you, as well as whatever guy you were hooking up with at the time. And so like, you weren't going to be left by your friends. If the guy started behaving badly or the girl started behaving badly, you had other friends there to like check them.
Right.
And that was the method of safety. And now the method of safety is, I'll just do this through this mediated experience of the apps. And I completely understand the impulse to protect yourself. On the other hand, I think it has it has a distortion field that it casts off about, well, what happens when you finally do meet this person in person? And, I even think about things like the issue of the front-facing camera or cameras in general on smartphones. They all kind of fisheye. And so they make people feel like their noses all look big and their faces are all too wide. And so you have this like Instagram effect playing on young women and young men's sense of what they look like and their sense of self, because they're seeing this not a reflection. They're seeing this distortion through the camera lens. And I think you have the same kind of thing where like, that's not what you look like on the app. That's not what you seemed like on the app, you know? And so then you're like more anxiety, less time going out. And like, it's a disappointment to go meet the person in person because their online persona felt more attuned to you or felt more attractive or felt whatever. That's the downside risk. That's the thing everybody worries about. At the same time, I have plenty of friends who are happily married and met their partners on
Yeah.
dating apps. So I think it's a how you use it kind of thing. So I don't know. I guess the long way around answering your question is like, yeah, I think technology plays a role in scale. I think it also creates some weird incentives for some people. And I don't know that it's on the whole better than what we were doing before the apps. But on the other hand, if you're a shy person, if you've moved to a new place and you don't have a lot of friends here yet, if you're, you know, you have a history where you are, it would be traumatizing for you to just go out on a blind date. You don't feel safe with strangers. Then I think there's a lot to be said for having access to these kinds of tools. And then the other part of it, I think, is if you're in a group where there's just not a lot of you, but if you're a trans person and maybe you want to be with another trans person, or you're non-binary, you want to be with another non-binary person, or at least you want to find people that are open to relationships with someone who identifies that way, then you like it's needle in a haystack time out in the world.
Right.
But on these apps you can find your community. And I think that's the other piece of it, is like being able to find your tribe is actually still one of the net benefits, I think, of the internet and technology, even with a lot of the downsides of that. And obviously, like, the flip side of that is filter bubbles and blah blah blah, but there are a lot of groups of people who would not be safe otherwise. And
yeah,
so,
that's true. I wonder if what you said about the representation of a person through the camera and through the way they curate their profile, I wonder if when we talk about true intimacy, the conversation a lot of times is, oh, the apps are making, hookup culture, and so they're slowing down the traditional journey of young people meeting each other at church or whatever the nostalgic lie is that we tell. But I wonder if what that profile and what the camera does is keeps people from knowing themselves. Like, you curate yourself for the app. You can do this for LinkedIn too, and you put whatever your best self is for that. Oh, it'd be so interesting to do research where you look at someone's profile on like each different app and compare what their personality is on each one. A dating app, their professional, their Twitter, their Facebook, whatever else, based on who they think is going to see it. I wonder if the part of intimacy that is being retarded by that is people knowing themselves and knowing what they like or what they want, because they're like, I have to project this to get this thing I think I want, or to get the swipe that I want, or to get the first interaction that I'm trying to get. And this is hypothesis. Yeah. I have no idea if that's true.
It's an interesting question. It makes me think about something from Cristen Dalessandro's book, Intermittent Inequalities, because there were these, in kind of the section on gender, and in particular thinking about heterosexual relationships, there was this phenomenon of like young women reflecting on past bad relationships, or just past relationships. So we don't have to say bad relationships. And like, actively kind of trying to draw a lesson from that relationship. Like, what did I learn about myself? What did I learn about him? What did I learn about what I want from relationships or sex, or how I want to be treated, or whether I even really want to be married, or any of these things. And so women are like, straight women that she interviewed were like kind of actively interrogating their relationships for lessons, and saw them that way, even to a degree that frankly bothered me, because there were women who would talk about emotionally or even bordering on physically abusive relationships and saying, I stayed too long, and but then again I learned an important lesson, and kind of going, God. And like taking it as a problem for them to solve next time around. So
Yeah.
not really like assigning blame on the guy who was abusive, but instead saying like, hey, I'm the one, like once he gave me the red, once he put up the red flag, I probably should have bolted. I stayed too long, but I learned a valuable lesson. And so now hopefully I will not repeat that mistake again. I don't like, I'm not a mental health professional. I have no idea whether that's the healthy response or not, but I'd like to dish a little blame on the abusive guy, if I may, just
a smidge.
On their behalf, just a little. The straight men, in contrast, when asked like, did you learn anything from this relationship that didn't go that well, would go, oh, no. Like, no, I didn't learn anything from that. Like I didn't know lessons from this.
That sounds right.
And their beliefs about how they learn what they want from a relationship is instead this like distanced idea of like experience and age, that like I will magically get wiser as I get older, but I don't have to actually reflect on anything.
I don't have to acknowledge learning any lessons on the way.
Yeah. They'll just suddenly congeal in my head. It's like that meme of the little boy who's like sitting at the desk and he's like turning the page in the textbook and going like this.
Yeah. He's just trying to like zoom it. Yeah. Wafting
so he turns the page and wafts it up, turns the page and wafts it up.
Well,
like, and so that is like, I think that there's that presentation of self problem is also like what version of yourself did you get reflected back in the interaction?
Right.
And the thing I think about is like, I don't know, in my 20s, my, early college era, like the things I did to try to get this dude to care about me was insane. And I wasn't doing it on an app, but like I would change the way I dressed. I would change the way I did my hair. I would change the way I did my makeup. I would change the way I acted. I would change who I hung out with in order to like, is this anything? Like, will this get you to acknowledge my existence
what's gonna
more
stick?
Than every few minutes? Like, and even at one point, like looking back on it, I was like, oh my God, I don't even know if I was aware of it at the time, but I like wound up dressing like this guy sometimes. Like not consistently, but I suddenly had like clothes in my closet and I'm like looking back at old pictures going, why the hell am I wearing that? Like
for the audience, that man
for
was
the audience,
Jackson.
To get this man to see me because he was such a narcissist that maybe if I looked like him, he would notice me.
For the audience, that man was Michael Jackson. That Farrah was. I just like the idea of you in the red leather.
I had that jacket.
Of course you did.
I genuinely had that jacket.
Did you really? That's a dope jacket.
Yes. And then I lost it to my great dismay, even to this day.
I have another thought that pivots that builds on what you're saying, which is again, for Gen X growing up being in the...
Sorry, I'm still laughing about Michael Jackson.
You're welcome. For Gen X being in their 20s and being, figuring out the world and dating and everything like that, like, I think I'm safe to say men were always given a pass to sow their oats and to have that approach of like hunter-prey towards dating. Mm-hmm. I think what the media does, going back to your point about hysteria and the different treating of women's feelings and the profile picture and that whole thing, I think what the media gets focused in on is not just that like hookup culture is dangerous for society in some way, but it's like, oh, women are a participant in this and have the same shopping approach, and we don't like that. That makes us uncomfortable. That makes older generations uncomfortable because we haven't seen that. We haven't seen that shared publicly before. Not that women haven't felt it before, but it hasn't been socially acceptable, except for Samantha in Sex and the City. And even that's like, ooh, so naughty. But I think that is another, there's a sexism component to it that is like, oh, I'm not sure if this is good for society for everybody to have an equal chance to reject people or accept them or choose on their own terms. Mm-hmm. You think that's part of this?
Yeah.
It's undeniable.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely right. And you see it in like, I was looking through some of the some of the stories we had pulled in the research for this, and like there's this piece from Fortune in July that's like, the 40-year-old American millennial breaks a new record. A quarter of them have never married, signifying a shifting norm. And the key image is of a woman happily being licked on the cheek by her dog.
God bless that woman, by the way.
Yeah. Like,
and the dog.
Everything's going great for her. Everything looks great. She looks like she has a nice place to live. Dog's super happy. She's having a great time. Everything's good. But like,
no, the norms. We must protect the norms.
Yeah, exactly. Must protect the norms. And then the flip side of it is these like pieces about so apparently back in let's see, I don't even know exactly when this piece was written. Let me see. In 2021, Puriteen began trending on Twitter because of a hashtag cancel porn movement that had taken off on TikTok. And so like, so then you have headlines describing a sex recession and that Gen Z is sex negative as opposed to sex positive. And they are flip sides of the same coin, right? Like, how dare you reject marriage? How dare you reject sex? Like, but also don't be Samantha.
Yes.
And like perpetuating here's my favorite one.
And also be cis hetero only.
Yes.
Like, I mean, the norms is really.
Yes. How dare you, a heterosexual woman, present as anything other than a heterosexual
How dare you have some opinion?
Yes. But it's part of this is also the like, the idea, for example, that for people who are interested in this kind of philosophical undertaking, I highly recommend subscribing to ContraPoints' Patreon. It is one of the highlights of my life when she drops a new tangent. But her most recent tangent is about, I think, misogyny. And one of the things that she talks about is the idea that men's source of sex, that they are visual, that they are turned on by what they see, and that women are turned on by what they feel, and emotionally what they feel. And like, this is insane. Like, we're not different species. We both have eyes and brains with visual cortexes.
No, only men. Only men. Women are all blind.
Right. But it also like reinforces this idea that like women's bodies are aesthetically pleasing objects to be ogled. Right.
Yes. And that is their purpose.
Bodies, yeah, that's their purpose. And men's bodies are for some other thing. And they're like not really not nice to look at.
For work.
And it's like, I guess so. Yes. It's for conquest and work. And like the thing about Samantha is she liked looking at men. And the truth is, most straight women probably do like looking at men. Otherwise,
some men, yeah.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be straight.
Right.
But we like insist on this idea, and it's just, it is literally insane. If you are also going to stand over there in the evolutionary psychology camp and tell me about how human brains developed, it makes literally no sense to say that somehow male and female brains branched and derived their sense of attraction from totally separate sensory experiences. One isn't even fully sensory, it's emotional. And the other one is purely sensory, and you have to have functioning eyesight in order to experience it.
And men have no emotional connection that ever happens. It's only visual.
Never.
Yeah.
No. And like, this is, I think, also though, where the like people who are actively interrogating these things, and I think even some of these Gen Zers that are saying cancel porn, or are being accused of being Puritans, is like, you hear more from each generation, you hear more from young men about their emotional lives and about their desire to be accepted for having emotional lives. And it's like this, again, incremental change. It's not everybody, and it kind of gets beaten out of you over time. And because the society really wants to reinforce these stereotypes about what men are like and what women are like. But like, women can find men visually appealing, and men can have emotions, and not everybody wants to be in an opposite sex relationship, and not everybody wants to spend a whole lot of time thinking about their presentation of gender. all the time. It's exhausting. And so I don't know. I think like this is where I think the technology can be really helpful, but the like reactionary backlash every time of like, oh, but what about the norms is the problem.
Yes, it's the container that everything gets stuffed into. And in this case, we're talking about intimacy, but I suspect when we do a deep dive on the professional lives of millennials, then there's another set of norms that it's like, whoa, that you're changing everything. It's like they're not really changing anything. They're just honestly assessing what is best for them and asking for it, or in some cases negotiating for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is like the estimation of how much they are changing everything is wrapped up in two things. And one is the kind of what I constantly refer to as like the cult of the young. So the cult of the young is, in my view, like young people will change the world and that's their job. It's that piece we quoted several episodes back about like literally that's what young people are for, Tom Friedman or whomever says. And like that idea is like way too much pressure on people whose brains are not fully formed and who haven't had enough life experience to figure anything out and who are living inside the container with the rest of us. Like, it's not their job to fix everything. It's all of our jobs to fix everything.
So go ahead, finish.
No, I think this is the so we're holding in tension the expectation that they're going to change everything. And then when they don't, but they didn't perfectly adhere to all the norms, we're mad at them about that too. Like it's one or the other. Either drop out or sell out. Those are your choices.
Yeah, and do it exactly the way we want you to or thought you would. But it's also this, like you go to work, your boss comes to your desk and says, "Did you finish that assignment?" And you go, "What assignment?" "Oh, well, I assigned you with fixing everything." "You did?" Like boomers assigned, like specifically our friends from Millennials Rising, assigned millennials with this role of they're going to fix everything. I don't know that they got a vote to say, yes, we volunteer, we will take this assignment on. It was just sort of projected on them. We had Tyler saying like, of course, that's what I said. I was 16. They interviewed me. Like, shit, what am I supposed to say? Everybody thinks they're going to do that. Then you get into the world and you're like, actually, I don't want to fix everything. I just want to make my rent. I want to date. I want to take advantage of American freedom and like live my life and work and figure out my career. I don't know that I systemically can change everything, even though there's 70 million of us that have all given this shared assignment, group assignment, as we've talked about.
Yeah, I think but hidden in that is another piece of it, which is like it's talked about as if it's a shared assignment, but it's not. Like you're not actually, those 70 million millennials were not ever actually encouraged to be in solidarity with one another.
No,
right. There was never really a push to tackle it as a group project. It was
more of a
project,
fear.
All graded individually.
It was a fear that they could act in solidarity.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. If they formed solidarity, that would be the negative outcome, right? They're either going to be the next greatest generation.
Going back to Millennials Rising was like, if these people all pull together, look out. And it's like, wait a minute, you've been positive, negative.
Yes. If they all individually strive to live up to our expectations, they're going to be the next greatest generation. If they band together to try to achieve progress, they will be the hordes that overran us.
Right.
And that is like that's everything you need to know about intergenerational warfare or whatever. Like it's just about power elites versus everybody else all the way down. Those are the turtles, power elites. And it's just like the desire now for Gen Z to just recapitulate the same steps is so incredibly powerful. And it's just wild because I do feel like, and I mean, I would really want us to kind of look at this because I feel like I am seeing probably because the algorithm.
Oh, the boomerang of the same story. Yeah.
The boomer end of that story. And then this weird aberration, which is Gen X. Like there was not an expectation that Gen X was going to change everything.
No.
There was not an expectation that they were going to be the next greatest generation. They were slackers and losers who were never going to amount to anything. And so what happened there? Like, why did that generation get to be like just dumped out the the sluice of the expectations of young people. Like, what happened? and then I think the other part of it is that piece from, oh gosh, do I have that book up here and so I can remember his name? Louis Menand, I think, writing in the New Yorker, wrote this piece about kind of the civil rights movement, and that like young people actually didn't do that. that the people, that baby boomers were not at the forefront of the civil rights movement. They were the foot soldiers of it. The people who were leading it were older than that because duh.
Right.
Right. These 18-year-olds don't know how to organize mass movements. They just don't.
No. Yeah.
And so you always have to have intergenerational solidarity to achieve change, but we don't want that either. And so let's keep telling this story about how young people are supposed to save us, and oh, when they didn't, they sold out, or they failed, or they are upending norms in whatever, some retrograde way instead of some progressive way.
Do you think, I mean, so we've been talking really about sex and intimacy, and we keep, I mean, for every topic we're going to get into the power structure, no matter what, because America. But
well, also because that's what narratives are. Narratives are about power. Always.
But do you think, the stories about millennials are delaying marriage, and therefore they're pressing these norms, and that affects home buying, and that affects children, and that affects, the demographic outlook for the country, or whatever the news stories are. Do you think millennial intimacy, based on the conversations and research we've consumed, do you think millennial intimacy is fundamentally different from Gen X intimacy, or what we think Gen Z intimacy will be?
I don't. and I think even the other day I saw a chart that I will try to scare up, and maybe we can drop it in here somewhere. But it was talking about home ownership by age, by generational cohort. So by age 40, what percentage of each generation owns a home? And, millennials are a little bit behind Gen X. Gen X is a little bit behind boomers. Boomers are way behind silent generation. But we never talk about how boomers also were failing to live up to homeownership goals at the age of 40. Now, I bet if we rolled back to 1985, maybe we could find some headlines about that. Might be interesting to go look and see if people were fretting about boomers' home ownership.
Yeah, let me make a note of it.
But the kind of, a quarter of them will never, are not married at the age of 40. And yet, we also know that more people are getting married later in life. So is the objective marriage by 40? And if the objective is marriage by 40, why? And so if it's not, if it's just marriage, well, then just give them a minute. A whole bunch of people are going to get married in their late 40s and early 50s. It's going to be fine. And then we'll see it all sort of shake out in the wash. The final piece of it, though, it does come back to, why are we anxious about their formation of marriages and their sexual norms and their gender norms? It's because we want things to look like what went before. That makes us feel happy and secure, and it helps people predict the future. If everything looks like it did before, then I know what's going to happen next. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big part of it, is you want to be able to have some kind of, I don't know. I don't know how long this has been going on. I don't know if this is just an inherent human characteristic, but it seems like, especially with the rise of technology and more data collection and censuses and surveys and all of this kind of stuff, there's way more desire to be able to predict the future, which is just a thing you can't do. It'll look a lot like today, but not exactly like today. That's about the best you can say about the future of anything. And then there will be these massive leaps that you didn't see coming. But when you actually pull up the rug, you can look under it and see oh yeah, well, there were all these experiments that led up to this. And so it too was incremental. But
but the human part doesn't change.
No, but the human part doesn't really change that much. And so I think is there something fundamentally different about millennial intimacy? Not in the big juicy center. Around the edges, there's lots of interesting stuff going on.
Yeah.
There's lots of interesting inquiry about, do relationships really need to be structured this way? Do I need to get married by this point in time? Do I need to have kids at this age? Do I need to have kids at all? Do I need to get married at all? there's all kinds of conversations around this. They're also not unique to millennials, though maybe there's incrementally more of them having those kind of interrogative conversations, thinking about it instead of just doing what their parents did. But by and large, as a species, we do what our parents did. Like, that's especially when it comes to partnership.
And I got married at 30. My parents got married at 20. My grandparents, I'm Gen X, my grandparents said, oh, why aren't you, I was 24, 25, why aren't you marrying that girl? Like, that's kind of normal for them to say. The expectation is you should be married by now because your mom was or we were. And probably with my own kids, when they're 35 and not married, I'll say like, oh, you should be settling down. Right? But I don't think we've experienced it en masse with mass media covering it as like a threat to national security or the threat to the economy. It's kind of a weird extrapolation.
It is. And I think it probably says more about people's feelings about the structural soundness of our economic foundations than it does about marriage or intimacy or parenthood or any of the rest of sex or any of the rest of that. I think the desire for more stability may be what's driving this kind of reactionary thing. It's funny that you say that, though. I mean, my mother was 24, 25 when she got married.
Spinster.
My dad was getting married for the second time at 28, 29. His parents, I don't know how old they were when they got married, but I know my mom's mom, first of all, my mom's parents, her mother was the older of the two. And maybe nearing 30 when they got married and had kids. I'd have to go back and check that. But I also had a great aunt who, very Southern, moved in with her sister after my dad was born to help out, just visiting, and stayed visiting for 60 years. And like never moved.
What the hell just happened?
Something is going on with...
Is it your birthday? What the fuck is that?
There is some gesture I am doing, and I think it's this, but I'm not sure, makes the balloons go, and I have turned it off more than once. Google Chrome wants to use reactions, and that's what just happened.
Allison, I will be furious. You keep those balloons in that.
Yes, you've got to keep the balloons. But Aunt Annie... probably, if I had to guess, and I love her dearly, she has passed, but if I had to guess, I would say that Annie was bi or possibly a lesbian. I don't know. She was like perfectly happy to meet the man who is my husband now, thought he was great, also really strongly against marriage, and encouraged me never to have children. Even though she really did a great job helping raise she did as good as she could helping raise my dad and his siblings. She tried. But like, what she wanted for me was not tradition. And this is a woman who, was born in the, 1910s, 1920s. So like, this is the problem. Once again, there is no median anybody, and there is no median set of values and norms, and everybody has their own experiences and has their own reactions to that. My parents did not especially pressure me to settle down. They also didn't really like any of my boyfriends. So that might've been why.
That's gotta be part of it too. All right. Well, this has been a great exploration. I think.
Have we solved it? Have we figured it all out?
Oh, yeah. And I think we have more work to do on this topic and others.
My diagnosis is this. Everything's fine.
We could have saved 4 episodes. Just like, hey, intimacy, just quick check-in. It's a tweet. Everything's cool. Just move along. Nothing to see here.
It's fine. Keep doing what you're doing.
I agree. I don't think it is a moral panic that we need to twist our heads around. I think everything is fine. So I agree with you.
But yes, we have more to do. As ever, we have more to do. I have no idea what we're talking about next. We'll figure it out. But it's good. It's good just having a one-on-one. We haven't done this in a while.
I know. I'm glad. It's always rewarding.
All right.
All right.
You keep working on your beard.
It's going to happen. It's going to look like a beard in 6 to 8 years. All right, I have to get to my next one.
All right. Good to see you.
You too.
Bye.
See ya. In the Demo is produced by Farrah Bostic and Adam Pierno with support from the Difference Engine and edited by Allison Preisinger and AMP Studio. Music by Omega Man under the Creative Commons license. Go to inthedemopodcast.com for behind-the-scenes research and supporting information. Please rate and review the show. Someone once told us it helps.